Usually when we talk about something like a medical diagnosis, there's this expectation of total precision. It's like engineering.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's very binary. It's visible.
exactly. I mean, you break your arm, the x-ray shows that jagged white line, and the doctor just points and says, well, there it is. That's
Yeah,
the problem.
right. And that brings a certain level of comfort. You can see the issue clear as day.
Totally. But then you step into the world of human leadership, into like corporate culture, and suddenly that x-ray machine is just completely useless.
Oh, yeah. You're suddenly looking at a diagnostic landscape that is incredibly murky.
Right. So if you've ever walked into a meeting feeling like you had to, battle to get your way or felt that the only way to prove your worth was to dominate the conversation, you will absolutely want to hear this.
Because today we were getting into something really counterintuitive.
We really are. Welcome to today's deep dive, everyone. We are unpacking the business parable called The Go-Giver Leader by Bob Berg and John David Mann. And our clear mission today is to explore the story's protagonist, an executive named Ben.
Right. And we're going to look at his radical shift from being this conqueror with a battlefield mindset into an incredibly effective, service-oriented leader.
Yes. We're going to unpack exactly how a corporate raider learns to stop pushing and start pulling. Because the core paradox here is this crazy idea that the only way to gain true influence is to actually give it away.
Which is just so hard for a lot of people in business to accept. I mean, Ben's journey is essentially a proxy for anyone who has been taught that business is a zero-sum game.
Exactly. Like for one person to win, another person has to lose.
Right. So to really understand the profound nature of Ben's transition into effective leadership, we have to start by examining his baseline. We have to look at the armor he wears.
So, let's walk through that starting point. What exactly is Ben's situation when the story opens?
Okay, so Ben is this highly ambitious executive. He has spent over a decade climbing the ladder at a massive conglomerate called the Martin Group.
Right, he's a real corporate climber.
Exactly. And he has just landed a probationary spot in their highly competitive mergers and acquisitions department.
Which is, that's cutthroat stuff.
It really is. It is entirely a sink or swim moment for him. He's handed this assignment that carries an astronomical amount of pressure.
Like a test to see if he can actually hang with the big dogs?
Basically, yeah. He is sent to acquire a struggling manufacturing company called Allen and Augustin.
And they make chairs, right?
Right? Fine, handcrafted wooden chairs. They're a local legend. Their product is impeccable, but they have fallen on very hard financial times.
And this isn't just a standard acquisition, is it? Like, this is where the mechanics of his challenge get really tricky.
Precisely. Because Allen and Augustine isn't owned by a traditional board of directors. Ben can't just, take a few executives out to an expensive steak dinner and schmooze them.
Right, because of how they're structured.
Yeah, they are set up with an employee stock ownership plan, an ESOP. That means the 500 employees are the actual owners of the company.
Wow. Which just completely neutralizes the standard corporate raider playbook.
Oh, totally. You can't just leverage a few greedy executives.
You literally have 500 individual blue-collar workers who have to vote yes or no on this merger. And Ben has exactly 1 week to secure those votes.
One single week. And if he fails, he likely loses his job.
Talk about pressure. The stakes couldn't be higher for him. So how does Ben mentally prepare for this?
Well, as he walks up to their old brick building for his very first meeting, he looks at their slogan painted on the wall. It says, "We hold you up."
That's actually kind of nice.
It is. But Ben finds it incredibly hokey. In his internal monologue, he explicitly frames the entire situation as a battlefield.
Right, he's literally using war terminology in his head.
Exactly. He goes into the initial meeting with the company's exploratory committee, not looking for partners, but looking for opponents he needs to conquer.
It's a perfect reflection of how modern business culture so often, co-ops the language of war.
Oh, constantly.
I talk about hostile takeovers, capturing market share, deploying a strategy. Ben thinks he needs to breach their walls. And his rhetorical weapon of choice is so specific and honestly so aggressive.
It really is.
It's the word but.
Yes, the butt cutlass. It's such a fascinating look at the subtle ways we establish dominance in conversation.
Explain how he uses it because it's so manipulative.
So Ben sits down at the conference table and starts by praising the executives. He quotes their catalog back to them.
Just buttering them up.
Totally. He talks about their legacy in the city, their craftsmanship, their tight-knit culture.
He builds them up beautifully. You'd think he was a huge fan.
He really does. And then he pauses and he drops the grenade. He says, but let's face facts.
Oof. There it is.
Yep. And he immediately pivots to their bleeding profits, the fierce overseas competition, and the painful pay cuts they've had to endure.
He weaponizes their legacy. He uses the compliment simply as a way to lower their guard so he can just slice through their defenses.
Exactly, and then he positions himself as the white knight who is there to stop the bleeding.
It's a highly aggressive, classic sales tactic. You establish rapport, and then you exploit a vulnerability to create urgency.
Right, he is trying to force them into a corner where saying yes to him is the only logical survival mechanism.
But because he views them as targets rather than people, he completely fails to read the room.
Oh, spectacularly. After delivering this manipulative pitch, he decides to go for the close entirely too early.
This part is so cringeworthy. He leans back, tries to look casual, and says, just to get a sense of where we are, let's take a preliminary show of hands.
Like he's already won them over.
Yeah. He says, how many of us would be inclined to vote yes right now? And he actually raises his own hand to prompt them.
And what happens?
He gets absolutely nothing. Not a single hand goes up. It is a catastrophic miscalculation.
It's just brutal. And the fundamental reason it backfires is revealed shortly after. Ben goes to a local cafe to do some networking and calm down.
Right, he needs a break.
Yeah, and he meets up with a friend named Claire, who is a marketing expert and has actually done some freelance work for Alan and Augustine.
So he wants to get some inside information from her.
Exactly. He literally wants to get some intel from her, again, utilizing spy terminology. But Claire is having tea with an eccentric, elderly woman she introduces simply as Aunt Elle.
And Aunt Elle, who looks like a sweet librarian enjoying a pastry, proceeds to just completely dismantle Ben's entire worldview in about 5 minutes.
It's amazing. Ben is venting his frustration about the disastrous meeting. He's giving this impassioned speech about how his offer is exactly what the company needs.
He's going on and on about how he can taste the victory, how they just need to listen to him.
Right, and Annelle stops him with a devastating observation. She asks him if he has any idea how many personal pronouns he just used.
Just counting his words right in front of them.
Yeah. She points out that in his short, impassioned speech about helping this struggling company, he used the words I, me, and my 15 times.
Wow.
Conversely, he used the words us and we exactly once.
A 15-to-1 ratio. That is so telling.
It really is. Aunt Elle then asks him to consider the meta-message of that ratio.
The meta-message.
Yeah, the meta-message is the reality vibrating beneath the spoken words. The lyrics of Ben's pitch might be saying, I am here to save your company, but the music is blaring. I am here to advance my career.
Man, that's the fatal flaw of the conqueror mindset, isn't it? It communicates pure self-interest.
Exactly. Even when Ben is technically offering financial salvation, the way he frames it makes it entirely about his own victory.
The committee immediately went on the defensive because they could sense they were just pawns in his game.
Right. They aren't stupid. They felt the push.
It makes me think of someone playing a game of chess. Staring intensely at the board, convinced that capturing the king is the absolute only way to win.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Right. He's calculating these aggressive, forceful moves, completely missing the fact that the board he's playing on isn't chess at all. It's a cooperative puzzle.
Yes.
If you knock all the other pieces off the board, you haven't won. You've just destroyed the puzzle. So, psychologically speaking, why does this battlefield mentality consistently backfire when we're trying to build real influence?
Well, it backfires because human beings possess a highly sophisticated, intuitive radar for manipulation.
We can just feel it when we're being played.
Exactly. When you approach someone with the underlying intent to conquer them, you instantly trigger their psychological immune system.
Oh, I like that phrase. Psychological immune system.
Right, because the natural physical and psychological response to being pushed is to push back. You create resistance simply by the aggressive nature of your approach.
Which brings us directly into the core philosophical shift of Ben's journey. And Elle starts giving him this impromptu linguistics lesson right there at the cafe table.
Yeah, a lesson about the actual physics of influence. Because Ben keeps talking about needing to convince the executives.
Right, and Elle points out that the word convince actually comes from the Latin word meaning to conquer.
Which blew my mind, honestly. It literally means to overcome by argument.
Yeah, she quotes that old saying, a man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still.
It's so true. You might batter someone down with logic and win the argument, but you haven't won the person.
Not at all. Their underlying belief hasn't shifted. They just ran out of energy to fight you.
Exactly. And then she asks Ben to define the word influence.
And Ben, operating from his corporate raider baseline, defines it as the ability to get people to do what you want them to do.
Typical Ben. But Annell corrects him by exploring the root of the word. In the Middle Ages, influence was actually an astrological term.
What, really? Astrological.
Yeah. It derived from an old French word meaning a flowing, ethereal power from the stars that acted upon human destiny.
Oh, wow. So it's a gravitational force. It's a pull, not a push.
Exactly. Influence and flow share the same linguistic root. And Aunt Elle uses two brilliant physical analogies to break this down for Ben.
Let's hear them, because they are so helpful.
First, she tells him to imagine a window fan blowing air into a room. The air doesn't go very far, right? The force of the push dissipates almost immediately.
Right, you can only feel it if you're standing right in front of it.
But if you turn that fan around so it's blowing outward, exhausting air from the room, it creates a vacuum. It can pull a column of air from an open window all the way on the other side of the house.
Because pull reaches infinitely further than push. That is such a vivid image. And her second analogy is even simpler, I think.
Oh yeah, she just asks him, how far can you push a rope?
You can't. The second you apply force to push a rope, it just crumbles and collapses in on itself.
But if you pull a rope, it follows you in a straight line, as far as you want to take it.
It's brilliant. Aunt Elle tells him point blank, pull is the substance of influence. Push creates resistance.
And then she drops the real paradox on him. She says, the less you say, the more influence you'll have. The more you yield, the more power you have.
Now, for a guy like Ben, this sounds like absolute contradictory nonsense.
Oh, it goes against everything he's ever learned.
Right. He hears the word yield, and his brain immediately translates that to give up. He assumes that if you yield in a business negotiation, you become a doormat.
Yeah, the people just exploit you and walk all over you.
But the universe immediately provides a real-world demonstration of this principle in action. The restaurant incident.
Yes, it's such a perfect encapsulation of the theory.
So Ben is walking back to the table, and this stocky, burly customer simply pushes his chair back and slides directly into Ben's path.
They collide perfectly.
Yeah, the big guy falls back into his seat, and his coffee spills all over the tablecloth and down his own jacket sleeve.
A total mess.
The guy immediately jumps up, completely furious, and barks at Ben. Why don't you watch where you're going?
Which, I mean, wasn't really Ben's fault. But notice Ben's immediate instinct here. His battlefield conditioning kicks in.
He reacts defensively.
Exactly. He says, me. I was just minding my own business. He feels his face flush. He is gearing up for a fight.
He's going to push back against the push.
Yep, he's preparing to meet force with force.
But out of nowhere, Aunt Elle is there. She steps right in front of the angry man, holds out a moistened cloth napkin, and speaks in this quiet, remarkably calm voice.
And what does she say?
She says, I'm so sorry. This may be entirely my fault. I believe I distracted him. May I offer to pay for your dry cleaning?
Wow. And we really have to dissect why the effect of this is instantaneous.
The angry man's tirade just stops dead. He works his jaw like a fish out of water.
Because he was expecting resistance and he got none?
Exactly. He takes the napkin, starts wiping his sleeve, and suddenly minimizes the entire issue. He mumbles that it's actually not that bad, it'll wash out.
He ends up apologizing to Ben and to Aunt Elle, and he leaves.
The entire conflict is diffused in a matter of seconds. It's incredible.
It really is. But let's pause here.
Okay, yeah.
Because we should probably play devil's advocate for a second. This is where the theory meets harsh reality.
Right. Let's say you're a listener prepping for a tense corporate negotiation, and you hear Aunt Elle take the blame for something that absolutely was not her fault.
You might think, okay, but if you're always yielding and giving away your power, taking the blame for other people's clumsiness, aren't you just making yourself a victim?
Right. How do you actually get anything done in a cutthroat environment if you're constantly falling on your sword? It sounds weak.
It's a vital distinction to make, and it's the exact hurdle Ben is stuck on. You see, Aunt Elle didn't give up. She gave. She yielded the tension.
Okay, break that down for me.
She explains to Ben later that the burly man reacted out of anger and embarrassment, but she responded with intention.
Oh, reacting versus responding.
Yes. Yielding, in this context, is like a boxer's parry. If a heavy-hitting fighter throws a hard jab at you, you don't stop it by punching their fist with your face, right?
I would hope not.
You don't meet force with static resistance. You wait until the punch almost hits, and you deflect it away with the slightest flick of your wrist.
Because you're redirecting the energy.
Exactly. The harder the punch, the less effort it takes to parry it, because you are using their own aggressive momentum against them.
She brings up Abraham Lincoln to illustrate this, right?
She does. She mentions a historical anecdote where Lincoln was told that a prominent government official had sharply criticized him.
Which would make most leaders furious.
Right, but instead of launching a counterattack to defend his ego, Lincoln said, "I have great respect for the man, and if he has concerns about me, there must be some truth to it."
Wow. He agreed with the critic just enough to completely deflate the conflict.
Because you can't argue with someone who is agreeing with you. The vacuum pulls you in.
That's the pull. By yielding the ego battle, Lincoln maintained his focus on the actual important issues rather than getting dragged into a petty, distracting skirmish.
Yielding isn't about saying, "I lose." It's about saying, "You win the moment." Because letting the other person feel validated is often the beginning of your own strategic triumph.
It totally recontextualizes how we think about leverage. And Aunt L introduces another crucial word to Ben here, tact.
Ah, tact. Ben assumes tact is just for weaklings, just being overly polite so you don't hurt someone's feelings.
But Aunt L breaks down the etymology again. Tact comes from the Latin word for touch, tactile.
Right.
Having tact means being in touch with the other person. And when you treat someone with tact, it allows them to stay intact. Their dignity remains whole.
Tact is the language of strength. Manipulation, which Ben was using, gets people to do what you want.
Yes.
True influence, utilizing tact and pull, gets people to do what they truly want. It's about aligning interests, not overriding them.
So armed with this incredibly confusing, paradoxical new philosophy of pulling, Ben realizes he has to go back into the trenches.
Yeah, he realizes he doesn't actually understand the company he's trying to conquer.
He needs to see the whole picture. So he sets out to meet with the 4 key executives of Alan and Augustine individually.
This phase of the deep dive is where Ben starts gathering the aspects of the elephant.
Like the old parable.
Exactly. The parable of the blind men touching different parts of an elephant. One touches the trunk and thinks it's a snake. One touches the leg and thinks it's a tree.
Ben is gathering these isolated, profound truths about leadership, but he doesn't yet know how they form a whole living animal.
Yes, he's just collecting the pieces.
I look at this phase kind of like a mechanic who has taken an entire complex engine apart.
Okay, I like this.
He's got all these brilliant individual pieces laid out on the garage floor, right? The pistons, the spark plugs, the belts.
Yeah.
But he has absolutely no idea how to put them back together so the car actually runs.
That's exactly where he is.
So let's look at the first piece of the engine he finds. He meets with Alan, the co-founder.
So Ben meets Alan in his top floor office. And Alan has had an entire wall replaced with plate glass, offering this incredible panoramic view of the city skyline and the distant mountains.
Really establishing that big picture vibe.
Totally. And Alan points out a narrow valley in the distance where he and his brother Augustine grew up. He points to the forests where they source their managed timber. He's showing Ben the macro view.
But the real lesson comes from a story Alan tells about a massive tragedy in the company's past.
Yeah, in their 3rd year of business.
Right. Their original workshop, which was actually an abandoned church they had bought at auction, caught fire. It burned entirely to the ground.
A total nightmare.
They lost all their inventory, their raw materials, their paper records. It was a total wipeout. And to make it infinitely worse, their insurance didn't cover it.
Wait, they had no insurance at all?
None that covered this specific type of fire, apparently. They were standing in the smoking ashes, completely ruined.
Oh, man. That is devastating.
And that evening, as the fire trucks finally drove away, Alan gathered his 20 employees in the ruined wet yard. The employees were devastated, looking for answers.
Naturally.
But Alan turned, pointed to the city skyline in the distance, and said, "You know why this place burned down. Because it was time to move to a bigger building."
Which is an utterly insane thing to say when your business is literally a pile of rubble.
I know. There was absolutely no financial evidence that they could ever afford a bigger building.
None. And Alan acknowledges the absurdity of it. He tells Ben that inspiring people in the moment of a crisis is relatively easy. Coming up with a grand vision is easy.
Right.
The agonizingly hard part is the holding of the vision. It took them 10 years of moving forward on invisible wires, operating without a net, to actually acquire the building they are in now.
Wow, 10 years.
Yeah. Building a business, Alan explains, is an act of faith because you are creating something out of nothing.
Why is holding the vision so difficult in a practical sense, though? I mean, day to day.
Well, Alan says, the single biggest challenge to any organization is the constant cloud of fear and doubt that swirls around the heads of the people involved.
That makes a lot of sense.
A leader's job isn't just to point at the horizon once. Their job is to keep seeing the destination in their mind's eye with crystal clarity, especially on the days when absolutely nobody else does.
That's the first key Ben writes down in his notebook. Hold the vision. Lead with your mind.
But holding the vision provides the destination, and a destination means nothing if you don't have the people to actually get you there.
Exactly. Which leads Ben to Augustine, the other co-founder. And the contrast between the brothers is immediate, isn't it?
It's night and day. Augustine is effusive, warm, and he practically lives on the production and service floors. He tells Ben that they don't just build chairs, they build people.
The environment Augustine has cultivated is radical. He shows Ben the employee scrapbook walls that cover 6 floors.
6 floors of scrapbooks.
Yes. Photos of weddings, kids, and even a wall dedicated exclusively to employees' pets, which is framed in glass to protect the kids' crayon names from smudging.
That is so sweet.
It is a deeply human-centric environment, which Ben is totally unaccustomed to.
And then we hear the story of Annie. Annie is running the entire sourcing department. When Ben sees her, she is working an absolute miracle on the phones, tracking down a rare hardwood shipment they desperately need to fulfill a custom order.
She sounds like a total pro.
She is. But Augustine tells Ben that when Annie first arrived at the company, she was a single mom with 2 kids, she hadn't finished college, and she had 0 tangible business skills.
But she had empathy.
Right. She knew how to listen to people so they actually felt heard. Augustine says they put her on the customer service phones and she excelled.
And later, when they needed someone to run sourcing, which is a highly complex logistical role, Augustine offered it to her.
And Ben is shocked by this. From an M&A perspective,
Yeah.
how do you promote someone with 0 logistical skills to run a massive department?
Right, it doesn't make any sense on a spreadsheet. But Augustine quotes Winston Churchill to explain it. He says, "I have found that the best way to get another to acquire a virtue is to impute it to him."
Imputing a virtue. Give people something great to live up to, and they usually will.
Augustine saw a capacity in Annie that she didn't even see in herself. By actively applying his belief in her, he brought it out.
And the narrative connects this beautifully to the physical chairs they build. The caramelized wood analogy.
Oh, I love this part. Ben notices these gorgeous, vibrant colors in the wooden benches around the factory. Deep oranges, reds, yellows. He naturally assumes it's an expensive dye or paint.
Sure, you think so.
But Augustine reveals it's a completely natural process they discovered by accident after that terrible church fire. The fire department's steam had heated some raw maple planks.
And the intense heat brought out the natural sugars inside the wood, caramelizing them into those beautiful colors.
The colors were always inside the wood.
Yeah.
They just needed the exact right application of heat to be drawn out.
People have all sorts of amazing qualities trapped inside them, Augustine tells Ben. With the wood, it's knowing how to apply heat. With people, it's applying your belief.
The challenge in modern corporate environments is that empathy is often viewed as a soft skill, like a liability. But Augustine proves it is the ultimate operational asset.
So Ben writes down his second key. Build your people, lead from the heart. He's starting to see that spreadsheets and strategic projections don't make things happen. Engaging human beings does.
But if a leader only has vision and empathy, they're essentially just a cheerleader, right?
Yeah, they lack grounding.
To actually get people to follow you into the trenches, you have to prove you know how to hold a shovel. And that's the reality check Ben gets when he meets the third piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
Frank, the VP of production.
Frank is a burly, taciturn man who has no time for boardroom pleasantries. He immediately throws a heavy canvas apron and leather gloves at Ben and puts him to work unloading raw lumber on the loading dock.
Wow.
For 2.5 hours, Ben is doing back-breaking, sweaty, physical labor.
Getting his boots muddy, quite literally.
Yes. Frank shows Ben the steam jets for cooking the wood and then shows him an older employee hand-carving a custom chair using traditional mortise and tenon joinery.
No screws, no nails, just
Yeah.
wooden pegs and shims holding the entire structure together.
Right. And Frank actually takes the carving tool and demonstrates a delicate scroll design with his own massive hands. Frank knows the physical reality of the work intimately.
When they finally sit down in Frank's office, Frank is brutally honest. He says he respects the brothers, Alan and Augustine, but he notes they'd perish without food if left entirely to their own devices.
They need someone grounded in reality.
Ben asks Frank how he manages to make the big operational decisions, especially when the visionary brothers disagree. And Frank says simply, you have to trust your gut.
Now, Ben, who is used to relying on endless data analytics and market projections, is highly skeptical of this. He asks Frank how you ever know if you have enough information to make the right choice.
And Frank's reply perfectly cuts through the paralysis of analysis that plagues so many modern businesses. He says, that's why they call it a decision. If you had all the information, there'd be nothing to it.
Let's expand on that because it is so profound. If you have 100% of the data, the spreadsheet makes the choice for you. It's just a calculation.
Exactly. A true decision requires a leap into the unknown. You have to decide even when the path isn't perfectly clear, and the fear of making the wrong call paralyzes so many leaders.
And why do the hundreds of men and women on the factory floor follow Frank? It's not because of his corporate title. They follow him because they respect him.
And they respect him because he knows his pegs and shims. He knows the weight of the lumber. He has mud on his boots.
Frank points out that employees won't trust a leader who doesn't trust themselves. Ben realizes he needs to ground himself in the actual work and stop hiding behind data.
Key number 3, do the work. Lead from your gut.
Which brings us to the final and perhaps most difficult piece of the elephant. Karen, the VP of Finance and Personnel.
Ben expects to meet her in a sterile boardroom to go over the financials, right?
Yeah, that's what he's used to. But instead, he is summoned to the local hospital.
The hospital.
Karen is sitting in the neonatal intensive care unit waiting room. One of the company's frontline employees just gave birth prematurely, and the mother is in critical care.
Oh, wow.
Karen isn't there as a corporate representative, She is there as a human being waiting for news.
Karen explains to Ben that the 3 men, Alan, Auguste, and Frank, they see vital aspects of the business. But as the person who signs every single paycheck and knows every single face, Karen feels the impact of every fluctuation in the business on a deeply human, consequential level.
She tells Ben that money is absolutely the lifeblood of the organization, but character is the bottom line.
She then asks Ben a question that completely upends him. She looks at him and asks, would you lay down your life for this company?
That's intense. Ben is entirely taken aback. He thinks it's an extreme, melodramatic question for corporate merger.
But Karen makes the point that in modern business, people use extreme words far too casually. They say they'd give anything to succeed. They say they are committed to the death, but would they really sacrifice themselves?
She tells Ben that she honestly doesn't know if the merger with the Martin Group is a good idea, but she knows that the 500 employees will only trust someone when they know exactly where he stands.
She looks Ben in the eye and asks the ultimate question. Where do you stand, Ben? And what do you stand for?
Karen leaves him to take a phone call, and a nurse quietly invites Ben to sit with another patient. It's the grandmother of Phoebe from accounting, who is alone in the oncology ward.
Ben sits in that quiet room, listening to the rhythmic beeping of the medical monitors, holding a dying woman's hand. And in that heavy silence, he is forced to confront Karen's question.
He realizes that his default answers, God, family, country, the Martin Group, they all feel like hollow abstractions.
He doesn't actually know what he personally stands for. He has no core conviction driving his actions beyond mere career advancement.
And this leads to his fourth key. Stand for something, lead with your soul. Look at how profoundly his conqueror mindset has been dismantled by these 4 people.
It really has. He went into Alan and Augustine looking for leverage, looking for weaknesses in their financial armor that he could ruthlessly exploit.
Instead, he was confronted with a CEO who holds a terrifying vision, a manager who builds people with radical empathy, a production boss grounded in the muddy reality of the labor, and an executive demanding absolute character and soul.
But, as we mentioned with the mechanic analogy earlier, he has all the pieces, but he still doesn't know how the engine works.
Right. He understands these 4 concepts intellectually, but he hasn't embodied them.
The bridge between theory and reality, the true crucible of his transformation, happens during the weekend, completely outside of the corporate environment.
It starts with a conversation about humility. Claire shares another Ellism with Ben. Antel says that humility is completely misunderstood in our culture.
People think it means weakness, right?
Yeah.
Or having low self-esteem or being a pushover.
Exactly. But the word humility shares a root with humus, which means soil or earth. Being humble literally means remembering your muddy beginnings.
Oh, like having mud on your boots, like Frank.
Yes. Great leaders don't expect others to do things they haven't done themselves. If you stay connected to the humus, you can accomplish anything.
Ben is struggling with this because he feels entirely muddy and confused. His identity as a corporate conqueror is slipping away. But the real breakthrough comes on Saturday when he takes his 11-year-old son, Robbie, to a martial arts tournament.
Ben watches Robbie's instructor, a young guy named Kim, address the students before the sparring matches begin. Kim outlines the 4 pillars of their practice: mind, connection, flow, and honor.
And as Kim explains these pillars to the children, Ben's jaw just drops because they perfectly symmetrically mirror the business lessons he just learned from the executives.
It's all connecting. Mind is holding the vision, connection is building people with empathy, flow is doing the work and trusting your gut, honor is character and soul.
But it's what Kim says about the actual mechanics of fighting that changes everything for Ben.
Kim tells the kids not to see their sparring partner as an opponent to be vanquished. Instead, they should see their partner as a collaborator. They are working together toward a shared, harmonious resolution.
Kim says when you put your partner on the mat, you aren't conquering them. You are using their force and trajectory, along with your own, to reach a conclusion that honors both of you.
It is the physical embodiment of yielding and pulling. It's exactly what Aunt Elle was talking about with the boxing parry. You don't meet force with force, you guide the energy to a safe, productive outcome. It's a collaboration, not a conquest.
And Ben applies this immediately, almost unconsciously, on the car ride home. Robbie is quiet, looking out the window, and Ben asks what's wrong. Robbie confesses that while he loves martial arts, what he really wants to be is a chef. He loves cooking. But he heavily doubts himself. He says, "I'm just a kid."
And what does Ben do in response? He doesn't just give a generic, dismissive, you can do anything you put your mind to, son.
Right. He looks at Robbie and says, "If anyone can do it, you can. You're one of the most creative people I know." Robbie asks, "You really think so, Dad?" And Ben replies, "I don't think so, Robbie. I know so."
Ben is unintentionally practicing exactly what Augustine did for Annie at the factory. He is applying belief. He is imputing a virtue to his son, giving him a vision of his own greatness to live up to.
He is offering support and strength without making it about himself. He is providing the container for his son's dreams. But this raises such a frustrating question.
What's that?
Well, why is it that we can so easily apply these empowering, supportive, service-oriented principles to our children or our loved ones, but the second we walk into a corporate environment, we put the armor back on and revert to treating people like opponents to be conquered?
That's the million-dollar question. Why does business strip away our most effective human instincts?
Right. Why do we do that?
It happens because the traditional corporate structure incentivizes the taking of power. It rewards visible dominance, loud voices, and quantifiable immediate victories over others.
But as Aunt Elle tells Ben, leadership isn't a suit you put on when you walk into the office. It's an imprint on the soul.
People read the you behind the words. Competence gets you in the game, but character is the only thing that sustains trust.
Ben realizes that his carefully crafted, manipulative pitches are totally useless if his character isn't aligned with the best interests of the people he's speaking to.
Which brings us to the boiling point of the crucible. Monday night, the big vote.
The fate of Alan and Augustine, the livelihood of 500 employee owners, and Ben's entire career all come down to this one meeting. 500 employees are gathered in the massive hall. The air is thick with tension.
The 3 musketeers get up to speak first. Alan gives a soaring, visionary speech about the future. Augustine gives a deeply emotional, tear-filled declaration of his love and belief in his people.
And Frank steps up, completely unpolished, and just bluntly tells them not to screw up the greatest company on earth.
They all receive massive applause. But Ben, watching the crowd from the side, realizes something crucial.
The employees love their leaders. They are genuinely moved by them, but they aren't fully convinced.
The underlying fear of the merger, the fear of losing their unique, carefully protected culture to the giant Martin Group, is still palpable in the room. They are hesitant.
And now, it is Ben's turn at the lectern. He walks up the steps, spreads out his meticulously prepared notes, and looks out at 500 expectant faces.
And just to add to the pressure, he looks over to the side of the room, and who is sitting there? His boss, Thomas J. Bushnell, watching his every move.
Oh man, the pressure is absolute. Ben looks down at his notes. He knows these words are good. He knows that with his practiced skill and these highly specific, targeted arguments, he could likely sway the room.
He could manipulate their mood, mold their fear like clay, and extract the yes vote he needs to save his job.
The old Ben, the conqueror, would have relished this moment of conquest.
But the new Ben, the Ben who held a dying woman's hand in the oncology ward, who saw the caramelized wood, who watched his son bow in honor to an opponent, he realizes he cannot do it.
He looks at his notes, realizes they're essentially a script for manipulation, and he makes a radical choice. He throws the script away.
He steps away from the safety of his data and speaks from his humanity. He starts by acknowledging his original aggressive intent.
He says, "A week ago, I came here on a mission to take you by storm, to convert you, convince you, if necessary, to steamroll you,
Yeah.
to dazzle you."
And then he delivers the line that fundamentally shifts the entire energy of the room. But you dazzled me.
He abandons his weaponized butt. Instead of pivoting to their weaknesses to make them feel small, he pivots to their overwhelming strengths.
He tells them how amazing they are, how they aren't just building chairs, they're building life. He validates their culture completely.
And then he reaches the climax of the speech. He addresses the haunting question Aunt Elle planted in his mind at their very first meeting at the cafe. What do I really have to offer you?
He tells the crowd that he has thought about this all week and he finally knows the answer. He says, nothing.
This is a terrifying moment. If I'm a listener prepping for a massive presentation, the idea of walking up to the microphone, throwing away my notes, and telling the client I actually have nothing to offer you sounds like absolute career suicide.
It really does sound crazy.
How does Ben pull this off without just looking incredibly incompetent in front of his boss?
Because it is backed by genuine character and a deep, undeniable understanding of the client's intrinsic value. It's not a negotiation gimmick.
He isn't saying the Martin Group has no money.
Right. He's saying that money doesn't build companies. Companies build money.
Yeah.
He tells them they don't critically need Martin's money, and he isn't even sure they should want it, because their culture is far more valuable than a cash injection. He tells them he came to save them, but realizes they don't need saving.
It is the ultimate act of yielding. He looks out at the 500 owners and says, I honestly have no idea if this merger is a good idea. It's your decision, and you're the ones I trust to make it.
He starts to walk away, stops, goes back to the mic, and delivers his final line. I offer you, you. And he walks out of the room.
He completely surrenders control. He refuses to conquer them.
This is the absolute manifestation of Aunt Elle's lesson. The more you yield, the more power you have. By completely surrendering control, by refusing to manipulate them or push them into a corner, Ben earns their unvarnished trust.
He was willing to lose his job right in front of his own boss to ensure the company made the right, unmanipulated choice for itself. That is character. That is honor.
So we fast forward to the aftermath. The next morning, Ben is summoned to Thomas J. Bushnell's office. He has his resignation letter folded in his pocket.
He assumes he is about to be fired spectacularly for abandoning the pitch and telling the target company they don't need the merger.
He walks in, and Bushnell isn't alone. Sitting comfortably by the fireplace is Aunt Elle.
And the massive reveal drops. Aunt Elle is actually Elizabeth Bushnell. She is the former CEO of the Martin Group and Thomas's mother.
She is the matriarch of the entire conglomerate. She had been quietly testing and guiding Ben all week without him knowing.
Ben is floored, but the hits keep coming. Bushnell tells Ben that the vote went through. 80% of the employees voted yes for the merger.
They didn't vote yes because they were conquered. They voted yes because they were empowered. But there was one strict condition attached to their yes vote.
Yes, Al and Augustine visited Bushnell's office late that night. They realized that they themselves were the bottleneck holding their company back.
They needed to step aside to let the company grow into a bigger building, metaphorically speaking.
So their condition for the merger was that Ben, the man who refused to manipulate them, who offered them back their own dignity, had to be the one to lead them.
And they sent Ben a gift. Sitting right there in Bushnell's office is the first chair. The plain, perfectly contoured wooden chair from Alan's office. The very first chair the brothers ever made.
And remember what Alan said about it. The only reason we still have that chair is that we gave it away. It's a profound metaphor for leadership.
Aunt Elle breaks down the core thesis here, giving leadership. She explains that taking leadership, like stepping up in a crisis, making hard calls, taking charge, is sometimes necessary. But giving leadership is about empowering others.
It is being the chair. A leader is the container, not the contents. The fatal flaw of the conqueror is thinking they are the deal.
A true, service-oriented leader holds others up, believes in them when they can't believe in themselves, and acts as the steward of their dreams.
It's like the physical act of sitting in a well-made chair. When a chair does its job perfectly, you don't notice the chair at all. You don't think about the pegs and shims holding the legs together.
You just feel completely supported, held, and free to do your best work.
That is what a leader does. They provide the structure for others to thrive, and they disappear into the support they provide.
This brings us back to Pindar's paradox, the concept that Aunt El references at the end. The best way to increase your influence is to give it away.
Ben stopped trying to push his agenda. And by yielding to the truth of the situation and the autonomy of the employees, he created a massive gravitational pull. He pulled them toward a shared future instead of pushing them into submission.
Okay, let's unpack everything we've covered today. We followed Ben on this incredible journey from a self-centered, conquering executive relying on the sheer force of push to a grounded, service-oriented leader utilizing the power of pull.
He learned that vision is useless without the fortitude to hold it in the ashes. He learned that you build a company by applying belief to your people, just like heat to wood.
He learned that you have to do the work and trust your gut, getting mud on your boots to earn respect.
And most importantly, he learned that character, who you are when the script is thrown away, is the bottom line that makes everything else possible.
And the relevance to you, the listener, is profound. As Aunt El said, leadership isn't a title you wear, it's a way of being. Whether you are leading a massive corporation, managing a small team, raising a family, or just navigating your everyday relationships, the mechanics of influence remain exactly the same.
Push creates resistance. Pull creates momentum. Tact, humility, and yielding. These are not signs of weakness, they are the true languages of strength.
It completely flips the script on how we are taught to operate in the world.
So we want to leave you with a final provocative challenge, building on Pindar's paradox. I want you to think about the one situation in your life right now where you are pushing the hardest to get your way. Think about the place where you are gripping the steering wheel the tightest, the relationship or the project where you are trying to conquer and convince.
Got it in your mind. Now ask yourself, what would happen if tomorrow you walked into that situation and completely yielded?
What if you stopped arguing and started listening? What if you deflected the tension instead of meeting force with force?
What power might you gain by giving your influence away?
It's a terrifying thought, but as Ben found out, it might just be the only way to actually win. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.